Yo!
Let's start off base. Let's start off real. The fact of the matter is the Dalai Lama is a fucking pedophile, all right?
Did we talk about that last
No. We have not addressed this yet, and it fucking has to be addressed. The fucking Dalai Lama, the guy who goes around preaching about, all this Buddhist bullshit, right? And about fucking, trying to combine all the religions into this one. He's a fucking New World Order puppet. He's one of these fucking, he was asking a fucking Indian kid to suck his tongue on video.
V N APE.
He was sticking his fucking tongue out at him on video, asking him to suck his fucking tongue.
Yo, I seen that.
This is the Pope of Buddhism. We already know the real Pope is. I don't even want to get into that. I mean, Jesus, I can't even imagine. He probably has a fucking kid tied up in his bed 24/7.
Yo, honest thoughts though. Like, what was he thinking?
Same shit he was probably always thinking. You understand, these are very odd traditions, right? Like Buddhists, like the monks.
Right.
I'm not talking about regular people who are Buddhist.
Okay.
I'm talking about like the actual monks. Like these people grow up in a form of isolation from the rest of the community.
Okay.
Like this is something where they get away from the entire world, and what they're trying to do is achieve nirvana in some sort of way, right? They're fucking just a bunch of dudes who are spending their whole day
Not doing anything.
just focused on doing everything they do mindfully. Meaning
Just meditate.
never be distracted. But all of life is meditation when you're doing it that way, right? Mindfulness, the idea that you're constantly just in the present. Not thinking about something, but
That seems really hard.
observing what's happening in the present moment fully.
Only?
Not distracted by thought,
Okay, yeah, right.
right?
That's what they try to achieve.
That's what they try to do. Yeah.
You think that's possible?
Yeah, people do it all the time. You can get it for moments.
I've obviously there's plenty of moments I felt that, but to just feel that at all times, I must feel like a fucking high. Like,
You can have it for more moments. Well, I'm telling you, meditation, I've had experience where, it was fucking heaven.
right?
It was like not like hallucinating and shit or any spooky shit, but
felt very, very good.
Yeah, because there's none of the bullshit that's in the way. You're completely relaxed. Your body's like disappeared, and you're just observing what's happening in the moment, not judging it. You're just fucking there. You're vibing.
In a sense, like daydreaming in a sense.
Absolutely nothing like what the Dalai Lama was doing with that fucking kid. Absolutely no sense of self-restraint.
Little man didn't even want that, bro.
Dude was surrounded by fucking people.
That
cameras,
just allowed it. That just allowed that shit.
And he's doing that shit like, dude, you got to get back into your meditation, bro. Like, you haven't meditated in years, have you? You got to get your shit together, Dalai. Mr. Lama, if you will.
Dude, fucking, yeah, I seen that shit and I was just like, that guy. What was the day? Did they apologize? Any?
Bro, I don't know what the fuck they said. I don't give a fuck what the excuse is. That motherfucker needs to be in prison. All right. You're on camera asking a kid to suck your fucking tongue.
That is, I can't believe people just like.
You literally stuck out your fucking tongue and you told them suck it.
That is wild. Where was this?
I don't know, but it was on camera and it's on Twitter.
Jesus Christ, man.
And it's on newspapers. And this motherfucker's still vibing.
And people look up to this guy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but look at the company that he keeps. I mean, dudes like Russell Simmons.
Is that the dude he fucks with, Russell?
Like Russell Simmons always talked about how, the Dalai Lama, he's such an amazing... Like these people...
No way.
They kiss each other's asses.
I never knew he was like...
And Russell Simmons been balls deep into meditation ever since...
I know. Every IG live video you see of him.
But he's into that Fugazi meditation. He's into that transcendental meditation, which the research is pretty bougie on that. The research kind of shows that it's like not really that effective compared to mindfulness in terms of like the benefits that it has on the mind, the way that you feel, your ability to concentrate and shit. Listen, when you got that much money, you could do anything. Look, there was Pedophile Island, right? And that shit just got brushed over. It's only kept alive because the people that don't really have the media influence that the media has
I mean, probably they're dudes.
Keep it alive because they're like, what the fuck? How can people not talk about this? Like,
I mean, what the whole list and shit. That shit still hasn't come out.
Not just the list, but like the amount of fucking like it's a island for pedophilia. These people are walking.
I mean, Ghislaine went to jail, bro. She already did her.
You go on flights. Yeah, but the people. Yeah, but it's like she got in trouble and she's in prison for facilitating children for sexual acts for nobody. For who? Who did she do it for?
I see your point.
Who? Who are these people? And why are they not being held accountable?
Right.
Well, I think you would see a lot of collapse in institutions because the amount of people that are involved in this kind of shit. It's always been a great tool for.
And as soon as any names come out, the internet will immediately destroy and bash and shun anybody.
Yeah, and deservedly so.
Right, yeah, of course. But yeah, that's the whole thing. They know they can't release like names.
Blackmail is a very useful tool. It's always been something that people try to use, you know? It's always been a great tool. I mean, it's always been a great tool among, even in secret societies, right? It's a great tool.
Yeah.
It keeps people in line.
Dude, I was listening to a William Cooper podcast that's apparently on Spotify.
The Hour of the Time.
Is that the name of it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to like a episode about Lucifer or some shit. It was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting guy.
What'd you get out of that? What did
I don't know.
Do you recall?
Not much. I was doing Uber while doing it. Just what's this dude's name? I think I might have wrote it down. I got you. Interesting fellow. Albert Pike.
Yeah, he wrote Morals and Dogma.
Yeah, that dude. That he was like he was in, what was he? He was in the government, right? Or he did,
He was a Confederate general during the Civil War.
Confederate general, there we go. And so apparently he had like a bracelet that he would summon and talk to Satan with, and like...
It's possible, yeah. There's a lot of shit. There's a lot of things that they don't really tell you. And like, Masonry is just a way of like... It's almost like, They
even pardoned him for treason?
I mean, it's almost like spiritual grooming, what Masonry is.
Okay.
Like, that's one way to describe it. Because it really, that's what I mean, you go to the first degree and you get all these lessons about, like, regular shit that has to do with, like, society in general. And then you go on to, like, moral degrees, and everything is, like, this moral ideal, perfected idea. Like, they teach you all these principles about how to be a good man. And then they start getting into, like, very mystical shit,
right,
that they want you to interpret for yourself and shit like that. And then they get to some real odd shit.
Isn't it that they feed you a bunch of bullshit till you get to fucking the top degree?
The problem is you never even know. I mean, theoretically, you would assume, like, if you talk to most Masons, they'll be like, there's 32 degrees in the Scottish Rite, and the 33rd is only symbolic. It doesn't really mean anything. That's the main. That's the contemporary view among the basic bitch Mason.
Gotcha.
Right, and so that's what it is. But it is mysticism, and it sort of does. It says that it doesn't subvert Christianity, because the thing about Masonry is, like, they tell you right off the bat, like, listen, any of this, if it doesn't fit with your worldview or your religion, like, just let go of it. Like, forget about it. Like, you don't have to. Don't accept it. Accept whatever fits with your own convictions and reject the rest. You don't have to do anything. You're here of your own free will. In fact, you have to admit that you're not being coerced into being there before they let you join, because they don't want you to join unless you want to. And then after that, what ends up happening is that people, I think it's sort of like natural selection in a way, because people start going through it and a lot of them just abandon it naturally. The way that, like, you see people that go to a martial arts gym, how many of them are going to be black belts? Very, very few.
Sure.
Most of them are going to be there. Some of them show up for a week and then they leave. Some of them show up for a few months. Some of them a few years. You know, most people that stay for a few months or a year or two,
some
right?
quit, some this.
Yeah, they get to a blue belt and then they're out, right? And so the same thing happens in Masonry. And so, but
most of them don't stick to 33.
I mean, 33, there's very little people that have a 33rd degree in Masonry.
My man
Pike did.
Pike did, right?
Pike did, yeah. But he contributed a lot to Masonry. I mean, shit, the Morals and Dogma might as well be the Masonic Bible, you know, between that and The Secret of Masonry, which is part of another, it's part of the not the Scottish Rite, but the York Rite. That's a
Yeah, I think he said that they gave away that book as like as something and just in like if you like joined or some shit. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, when you got to about the 14th degree, they would give you that book. But getting to the 14th degree back then wasn't like it is now. Nowadays, people can just jump through fucking degrees and a lot of it because Masonry is very much watered down.
Not to cut you off, I actually took a picture of a Mason building today, so this connects like full circle. But keep on. I'm just gonna show you it. And
basically, like this. Oh shit! I think I know where that is.
Yeah.
Is that by Miami Springs?
I'm not sure.
By Miami Springs Middle School? Were you in Okeechobee Road?
I don't even remember. It was today when I was working. But I was like, oh shit! I just took a quick picture. Wondershipful Cypress Grand Lodge.
Worshipful Cypress Grand
Lodge. Yeah, I think that's what it says.
Interesting.
But yeah, bro, there's a bunch in Miami.
It's blue though.
Yeah, does that like signify anything?
Yeah, it means it's a blue lodge, which is like where you go at first. Because at first in Masonry, you only go to the blue lodges where you have 3 degrees. The 3 main degrees, right? Okay. And then after you pass those, you're free to go to join any of the rites. So you can go to the Scottish Rite, the York Rite.
Gotcha.
You can become a Shriner, you know, any of those. So it's a lot of mysticism that gets introduced gradually. And the really weird stuff only gets saved if you move far enough along it. And Morals and Dogma shows that because it has a chapter for every degree.
Right, that's what I seen. Yeah.
And so I have a copy of it.
You do? Yeah, that's dope.
And you start seeing how it gets progressively weirder and weirder and more esoteric and more esoteric. And I don't know if you've been paying attention to what James Lindsay, the mathematician who's anti-communist, anti-woke, has, who had to do with the grievance studies affair, all that good stuff, where he's exposing the woke phenomenon. And he's, already come to the conclusion, right, that this stuff is basically tied to the same level of mysticism. And by mysticism, I'm talking about Gnosticism and additionally Hermeticism.
So many isms.
And those 2 isms were sort of combined in the era of Hegel, at least. And he used that. And then Marx used that. And the wokes use that. In fact, he points out that like the only way to understand like queer theory and gender ideology is to look at it as a Gnostic fucking cult, because that's how their dialectic moves. That's how they view the world. It's like they're trying to reach that perfected state. You remember Plato's theory of forms?
Yeah.
You remember? Okay, so Plato's theory of forms, right? Like he had the idea of like perfect forms, right?
That's a little confusing, but yeah, I get.
There's a table, right? You see a table. All right, but you're not seeing the tableness. You're not seeing the perfect form of a table. Like, what makes it a table?
The essence of it? I don't know.
What's the difference between a table and a chair?
The size, the property.
Because I could get like a table and I could stick like a little thing on it where you could technically sit on top of it. Does that make it a chair? So you could say that there's like the form of a chair, which is like the perfect real thing. Okay. And what you're saying is just some sort of like expression of the chair, but forms are timeless, perfect, changeless. They never change. They're already perfect. There's nothing better for them to change into. And in Masonry and in Gnosticism and in all of these different things, you're basically you're stuck in this world that's so imperfect and so fucked up, and you're gradually moving towards perfection, right? And this is why the pyramid is such a perfect symbol for the back of the doll. It's such a beautiful symbol if you really stop and think about it, because you can just see that expression, right? And you can understand it in so many ways. First of all, there's light coming out of the top of the very pyramid. The capstone is not built. The work is still being done. We haven't perfected the society yet. If you want that perfect society, the great work must be done. And we need those architects who can build this perfected new world and take us as close to the perfection and timeless, changeless beauty of Plato's forms as possible. It's Neoplatonism in many ways.
Neoplatism?
Neoplatonism, yeah.
Platonism.
Basically the same way as, like, you know how neo-Marxism is, like, it takes from the ideas of Marx and it sort of generates something out of that,
Okay.
creates something new out of that. There's Neoplatonists, they did a lot of that. And there's a lot of Neoplatonism in this modern view of the world, because Hegel, I think, is way, way, way closer to Plato than he is to anything Aristotle ever said. You know, because you can get this. I mean, think about it. If society is progressing, there's an issue of determinism. There's a big issue in determinism.
What?
Right? Because if...
I was going to ask you, by the way, do existentialists believe in determinism? Because isn't that, like, completely two different...
It could be either way. You could still be an existentialism in the sense that you don't think there's any real inherent meaning.
But don't existentialists really believe that everything is based on choice, free will?
No, I think only some of them necessarily believe that. Some of them don't care.
Okay.
And no, because I don't think that necessarily to be an existentialist, you have to accept the idea of free will.
Not accept it, but like...
But I do think that typically, like, the most contemporary, not contemporary, the most famous ones that came after Nietzsche would probably say something like, you know, there's no meaning, and so we have to use our free will to create our own sense of meaning. So we have to do that. Like, that's our job now, because it's not given to us because religion is bullshit. And so we're sort of stuck in this conundrum where we have to replace what the illusion that religion gave us, the illusion of meaning, with an actual sense of meaning in a world where meaning doesn't even exist, where it's fabricated, where we have to make it up. So that's a fucked up analysis.
What's your thoughts on morality? Do you believe morality is for losers?
No.
No?
No, how could morality be I mean, you're going to have a shit life if you don't have some sort of moral standards that you follow. I mean, you're fucked. If you don't have a moral standard, how can you make a decision between one thing and another? If there's no idea of what's better than something else, if there's no idea of what's good compared to what's bad, right? Your morality doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good one. I mean, you could fucking be, you know, you could have the ethics of a Machiavelli.
Okay.
And that's still, you know, that's still there's still an ethics to that. And the ethics would be like, there's no objective thing that tells us how to behave. But if you're someone who wants power, this is a way to get it.
Dude, have you heard about Zuckerberg trying to buy Hawaii? Or he's attempting to, or there's like...
if they're down, I don't give a fuck, you know. I'm sure.
You don't think that's a dangerous thing where...
I think he's just going to try to, you know, turn the metaverse into the physical world at that point. You know, he's going to start from Hawaii and, like, branch out, you know.
Make the whole country just like...
go for it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just storming through topics right now. Which philosopher would you kill if you had to kill one? And, like, all of his ideas, or whatever. They don't have to be that either, but...
If I was going to kill a philosopher, it's hard to choose between...
And you can't say Marx.
Then Hegel.
Hegel?
Yeah.
That would be your one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So no other Marx could be there's no other...
There's no Marx without Hegel.
Yes.
And without Hegel, there'd be a lot less problems. I mean, he was so stunningly full of mysticism and bullshit.
Okay.
That the fact that they, like, fucking, in modern days, like, there's philosophers that are trying to do a secular reading of this guy as though he's not a mystic, it's fucking baffling.
You don't think there's any good out of Hegel?
No. There's good out of everyone. I mean,
sure.
There's people that say that, you know, there's Nazis that mention, especially online, they love doing this shit. They talk about how, like, he improved the economy so much before he started killing the Jews, and it's like, yeah, that was a great thing to improve an economy.
Yeah, that
but
doesn't,
how about
like...
those millions of fucking people you slaughtered in brutal ways? How about that shit?
Yeah,
that doesn't redeem you.
That's some dumb shit to bring up. It's like, why would you even, like... But, yeah, I've been watching Dr. Umar videos, and...
Oh, Jesus.
They're actually pretty funny.
I mean, that guy's fucking.
What are your thoughts on him building a school for? I'm not sure if it's like just for black people.
I think it is.
Is that what it is?
I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure.
But I believe that's what it is. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean,
segregation coming back?
That's his. If he wants to show his true colors as a segregationist, then go for it.
Nah, but we can't say that because there are universities that are only black, right? Isn't that a thing?
They can have white students, but white students typically don't want to go there because they're not going to be accepted.
There are white students in HBCUs, though, right?
There are, yeah.
That is an interesting thing.
But they're not very well, like, typically they're not very well liked.
I never understood that concept. Is there universities for, like, white people only?
No.
Why not?
Because that's illegal.
That's not illegal.
Yeah, it is.
But HBCUs are not?
They're not. But HBCUs don't necessarily... They do allow...
Oh, all types of people.
It's not like it's an exclusively, like, black thing. It's just that, like, the laws that we have...
It's just
it makes it more easy to just say, all right, the white guy doesn't get in versus everyone else.
So it's just like a thing. Just everybody knows, like, yo, pull up to here. Like
that's the consequence of the civil rights movement. I mean, initially it produced some great results.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
But then we were left with the same structure decade after decade.
You don't think black people I'm making this really broad, hold up.
Yeah, go for it.
You don't think black people having their own, I guess, school is an improvement from what we had before?
No.
From them not owning anything?
Oh no, they did own things.
Well, I'm not most, right?
Most what?
Like back then?
I mean, if it was segregated, they did own things.
It was
unless
just
every black person was homeless back then.
No, I'm not saying
they
that.
had their own. Segregation was a fucked up system.
I'm just like
that's not the issue. The issue at hand is like whether or not a return to that on the basis of the idea that there's this rampant ass white supremacy that's everywhere.
That shit I don't like now. When and Dr. Umar is actually one of the guys that speaks like that too. So when I started hearing him use that, I was like, you know what he was saying? Apparently, like he's a fan of critical race theory. So
shocking.
So he was saying pretty much that the white man is actually working with the Chinese man because they're suing somebody. I think it's an Asian person that is suing Harvard or Yale.
Yeah.
And it's about it's something about I forgot what it is exactly, but
about how they're discriminating against Asians.
Might be that. Thank you. You got it. Read my mind. And
so the white man working with the Asian.
In Dr. Umar's world and mine,
yeah,
that this right here is the white man really working with the Chinese man to, I guess, stop the black people.
Stop the black people.
Or I don't know. I'm not wording it right. But then he's like, but in reality, the white man don't really fuck with the Chinese man.
He's just using him.
He's just using him because, Chinese. Yeah.
So white man is this evil genius.
I just don't like when they speak like that.
Is that not the biggest conspiracy theory shit? Like that type of shit.
Yo, he be heavy on that, bro.
That's exactly like they apply the critical race theory is like applying to like whiteness the same shit that like the Nazis apply to Jews.
Pretty much.
They're all working together in this global conspiracy to keep us down.
Dude,
they want to destroy our race. They hate us. They hate us because they ain't us.
Dude, Dr.
The unmelanated, disgusting, pink man that you refer to as a European is a slob of filth, brother. And I must confess that if you deliberate upon the quantification and the deliberation of the nation and you play some PlayStation, you will figure out that I am indeed, brother, full of shit.
Lord Jesus.
I love the black Hebrew Israelite and like the Nation of Islam shit. Those guys are
they're
fucking,
swag, bro.
Those guys are fucking. I'm sorry, that's clown world. That's clown world, bro. That's black KKK, bro. It's goofy.
Pretty much.
And it's the goofy. It gets so goofy like the later you move on. Like when Malcolm X was around, it's like all right. Like now, bro, it's just like bro, you're a clown. I'm sorry.
But yeah, dude. What else do I got before we get into our Hume bag? Fucking, but yeah, Dr. Umar is building a school, black people only. Let's see how it goes. He's an interesting guy. He's like a Pan-Africanist.
The white man is an animal. The white man is not human. Brother, let me tell you something. It is the melanin in our skin that provides empathy. You will never have empathy, you disgusting, unmelanated Caucasian beast.
Existence is a property of concept, not of objects.
Existence is a property of what?
I think I read that right. A property of concept, not objects.
Okay, so we're talking about idealism versus materialism?
Hold up, bro. Hold up. My phone just... This is actually Kant. He says this. I mean, we don't...
read it.
Let's get into something. Let's get into David Hume before we get into different...
We can get into David Hume. I came fucking prepared for...
But what I said
Hume.
was existence is a property of concept, not objects. This is why I wanted my book, because I even had shit like highlighted and I had so many good questions to ask you. But no worries. Next episode I had a bunch of different ideas that... What do you think? Do you even agree with that? What's your take on that?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we need to expand a bit more.
We need more context?
Yeah, I don't think I fully understand the like the point that he's trying to get at. I would think you can start with Kant, and his thing is you could almost read it chronologically from like his initial goal all the way down to his theories of aesthetics. I mean, it's so tied together. It's not like one theory of ethics that has nothing to do with metaphysics.
Okay.
It's like all beautifully packed in there in many ways. So the idea is he wants to create a science of human nature. That's really the main project that Hume was after.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was reading a little bit of him.
But again, we're talking science. Right, so he's an empiricist, which means...
like this is all like fact, this is objective, right?
Yeah, this is based on... Now, when you're talking empiricist, you're talking about like observation... Experience. Yeah, that's what it's based on, right?
That knowledge is just based off experience.
And he says basically that since what we use for all of the other sciences that aren't the science of human nature is...
Wait, we're talking about Hume now, right?
We're talking about Hume, yeah.
Okay. I thought we were still talking about Kant for a second.
No. What we use for the science of...
Yo, by the way, I had to check you because last other episode you didn't say my man David Hume was an empiricist, and I did say he was.
He is, yeah, he is. No. I definitely said a lot of ridiculous shit in that last one. You're right.
No. I'm just saying. I just remembered that.
No, you're right.
But yeah, he is an empiricist. Keep on.
And basically, the idea is this: we use our faculty of human nature to derive all other conclusions about the natural world, right?
Okay.
And so, therefore, all of the sciences that we have, physics, whatever, is based on the foundation of human nature.
Sure.
Because that's what we use. That's where observation comes from, right? So it's the only solid foundation for all the other sciences. The way he tries to lay it out is sort of by creating a mental map of like, it's like a mental geography, or you could call it like anatomy of the mind.
Okay.
I want to give a shout out to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy because they break it down beautifully.
Swag, shout them out.
One thing we could get into to really start, there's no way to start off with Hume unless you really start off with like his idea of perceptions.
Okay.
You would have to go there. And perceptions are basically anything that's mental, any mental content.
I had a couple Hume different little segments, but yeah, you could start off with that.
Yeah. No, he talks about perceptions, which is basically any mental content, like anything that's going on mentally.
Right, in your mind, right.
Yeah, and he divides that into two things. One of them is like impressions.
Oh, yeah, I remember
and
this.
the other one is ideas. And impressions, right, they're things like sensations, your desires, your emotions, passions, all that shit. And that he divides into two parts. So the impressions are like the what do you call it? Impressions of sensation. And then impressions of reflection. So impressions of sensation, those are the ones that come first. Because like think about your senses. Sensation, right? That comes first. That comes into your environment when you see, when you hear, when you do all that shit.
Right.
The other ones, like emotions and shit like
anger,
that, all of
sadness,
that comes after thought.
Right. After something happened, after you did, X, Y, Z.
So these are things that have to do with the five senses, all that bullshit. Impressions of reflection, that has to do obviously with your emotions, that type of shit, right?
Okay.
Now, he has simple and complex perceptions, right? The simple perceptions are just the ones that are basic. So if I pick up a flower,
Simple perception.
the simple perception is, for example, the sight of the flower, what it looks like. That's a
Okay.
simple perception.
Okay.
What it sounds like is another simple perception.
Okay.
What it feels like in my hand,
Is a
sense of
simple-
touch, that's another simple perception. The complex perception is the group of those perceptions, right? The feeling of those combined senses to
Gotcha,
produce a
gotcha.
combined sensory experience, right?
Interesting. All right.
Now, he does he does this interesting thing where he starts to point out like the difference between impressions and ideas, because obviously they have to be different. If there's two parts of what he calls like anything that's mental, any
Right.
mental content, then obviously there has to be a difference between one and the other, right? So he says that the difference between impressions and ideas is a matter of like the force and vivacity they contain. So, for example, if you're looking at your dog, the impression of you looking at your dog is a lot realer than your memory of what your dog looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Because your memory of what your dog looks like is not...
It's not as clear
It's not at all as
as
clear.
me presently looking at my
Right.
dog right now.
Right. And so memories are an example of ideas, right? They're basically just copies of the original impression that you had when something happened.
Got you. I got it now.
So they're just a copy of that.
It's pretty much what's stored in your little bank in your brain, just like the
Pretty
little,
much, yeah. It's
okay.
pretty much what's left over that you can call back into
Right.
mental existence. He also points out how limited our ideas are. It almost sounds pessimistic, that part.
Okay.
Because he really does see it as pessimistic, right? I'm going to try to like go through this real fast so we can...
Sure. Go ahead. Take your time, bro. We got battery.
All right, so all of our ideas are basically copies of our impressions, right?
100%.
And our imagination is pretty limited. They can only work with the impressions that they're given.
Right.
What he's basically saying is like, listen, once you have your sensations, once you pick up a flower, you can sort of mold it. You can use your ability to reason to sort of make it in your imagination like the flower's bigger, smaller,
Right.
like it has more edges and this and that. But you can only combine the information that you've gotten from the external environment
Right.
to produce something else, but it's only based on the content that you get from your senses. That's
Right.
all the information you have to work with, because there's nowhere else for information to come from.
Right. It's like when they say like you can only dream of things that you've only seen.
Yeah,
Type shit. Yeah.
right. So that the copy principle is the name of that. The idea that the
okay.
simple ideas that we have are copies of simple impressions. Okay, so
I mean, technically he's not wrong. I'm following. I'm rolling.
but think about what simple ideas are, because simple ideas are not the same as complex ideas.
Complex, you said it's like them grouped up.
Now, I don't want to get us confused, because there's a difference between
Oh, perceptions.
simple ideas and simple how do I call it? So when you're talking about complex impressions,
Okay.
right, and simple impressions, that's not the same as simple ideas. So, like, all right, we already know what simple impressions are, right?
Right. We grab the flower.
Right.
And then the complex one would be.
But the grabbing the flowers, see, that's not the
Oh, I got
the
you.
impression will be like the
edges of the flower.
the feeling of the flower in your hand, like
Okay, right.
like one sense of how it feels to be in your hand,
right.
what the color is, right? Those are two different impressions,
Sure.
and the combination of them is a complex impression, right?
Right.
So our simple ideas, think about your dog, right? Think about your memory of your dog right now.
That show. Yeah.
Okay, that's a
got it.
simple idea, because that's not really doing anything. It's just recalling the sensory information from before.
From what I've seen.
Right. So what he's saying is that these simple ideas, they're just copies of simple impressions.
Things you've experienced, things you...
Yeah, when you're thinking about your dog, all you're doing is bringing to mind
That moment when I seen my dog.
that moment when you saw your dog. But what you're not doing is like morphing the shape of your dog in your mind so that it looks like another breed.
Gotcha.
Right. So what he does say is that there's a causal, and this is hilarious, there's a causal connection between simple impressions and simple ideas.
There's a causal connection?
A causal connect. This is Hume.
So, explain this. So, technically, the simple idea of me just looking at my dog is connected to the simple impression?
Well, the simple impression is you looking at...
Oh, me looking at my dog.
It is the sensory information of you looking at your dog. Like the simple, the way he looks, the way he smells, all that shit.
All that shit. All my senses.
The combination of the senses is a complex impression.
Right.
When you think about your dog, you probably think more about, for example, what he looks like.
Sure.
Because we get most of our information from sight. Right? So, simple impressions cause simple ideas, is what he's saying. Remember what a simple idea is when you think about your dog, right? And you think about how he looks. That's a simple idea.
Gotcha.
And that idea of how he looks is caused by what? By the simple impression, by you actually looking at him and having that information, right?
Okay.
So, for example, there's some examples that he gives, right? Like if you want somebody who's never eaten a pineapple to know how a pineapple tastes, you got to give that person a piece of pineapple to eat. You never go the other way around.
Right.
You're never like, I want you to imagine the taste of it, and then that person imagines the taste of it, and then he eats it, and he's like, that's exactly what I thought. Yeah, you described it perfectly.
It's impossible. Yeah.
Right? So another way he gives it he gives an example of this is like a blind person, they won't have ideas of colors because they don't have impressions of color. So since they've never had those impressions, they don't have the idea.
Good way to put it.
Okay, and then he gives a different example as well that also has to do with vision, right? So like imagine somebody that's not blind, somebody has perfect eyesight, and they've seen all of the like basic colors that all of us have seen.
Yeah.
But there's a particular shade of blue that this dude has never seen.
That he's never seen, right.
Like, go ahead and imagine that he orders in his mind, like, all the different shades of blue that he's seen from, like, the darkest all the way to the lightest shade of blue. Right? Now, remember, Hume thinks that you can morph your previous perceptions. Right? You can work with the information that you have.
Right.
What you
so
can't
if you've seen all these shades of blue, you can kind of...
You can fill it.
That's based.
This is the way he put it, right? Perhaps he can fill in this. The idea is this: if he organizes all the shades of blue that he's ever seen from darkest to lightest,
he could fill in the missing one that he's never.
He'll notice that there's a gap where that shade should be, and perhaps he can fill in that gap. And he says this is like an exception to the rule, but the rule still stands.
So that's the only exception.
Not that that's the only exception. He recognizes that there's exceptions to the rule. But the rule is still a rule.
Interesting.
This is going to make more sense once he starts differentiating between different ways of knowledge, of attaining knowledge.
Yeah.
So once you start getting to like epistemology and ontology and shit.
Dude, how long you think it takes these dudes to come up with all this?
He came up with he started coming up with these great ideas and these are 80-year-old philosophy professors that are reading his books. When he was 23. 23. He was a genius. Yeah.
Dude. Yeah,
he went to university with his brother when he was 13 because his mother saw how precocious Hume was.
He was 13?
He went with his brother.
Jesus
and
Christ.
Yeah, he got a great education. He was lucky in that regard, and he was also very intelligent, so he's lucky in that regard as well. And he used it well. He did a good job.
God damn.
Now, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Here's where we start talking about definitions.
Okay.
You need definitions for shit, otherwise, like, what the fuck are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
But Hume doesn't, consider his era, right? He's in the 1700s.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't got that much words.
It's not like now.
Yeah. We got slang. We got this. We got that.
Think about it like this: Marx is part of the of what happened in the 19th century, right?
Okay.
And so was Nietzsche. Okay, when Marx went to university, Hegel had recently died. Hume is older than that. Think about how full of shit Hegel was.
Damn.
And that was after this.
Okay.
Okay. So consider,
You gotta just shit on him.
so Hume's account of definition, right? This
Okay.
is where we're going. Hume, he doesn't like these bullshit definitions where it's unclear what the fuck you're talking about and it's all abstract, goofy shit that makes no fucking sense.
I agree with him,
He's
bro.
not satisfied with that. He's like,
Me
bro, you
either.
gotta clear shit up, bro. You can't just whoop some shit out your ass, all right?
Respect.
So Hume, what he wants to do is get past words. Because words are just this little sound that you fucking make or this little symbol that you write.
Okay.
He wants to focus on what really matters, and what really matters is the ideas. So use words for what they're useful for, right? So he thinks he found a way to decide whether or not the content of a word is
needed.
is sensible, whether
Or
the
sensible.
word actually means something or whether it's just some ambiguous bullshit that has no content,
Okay, sure.
right? He says that his approach, now this is very ballsy, right? That his fucking approach is going to change moral science, as he calls it,
Okay.
as much as like the telescope and the microscope changed natural philosophy.
Right.
And they changed it a lot,
Right.
right?
And this is what he's expecting.
This is Hume's account of definition. This is how you decide whether or not a term has any actual content.
I'm all ears, bro.
All right, you start with a term, no shit, right?
Pick
Now,
one.
You ask what idea is tied to that term. So basically what you're saying is, what does the definition actually mean? What's the idea there?
Okay.
If there's no idea that's tied to the term, it has no mental content. If it has no idea, there's nothing there. It doesn't mean anything. If there's a complex idea, remember, you think about what a simple idea is.
Complex idea.
Complex idea is just a grouping of simple ideas, the same way that a simple impression is a complex impression is a grouping.
Like the dude with the
simple
shirts, the
impressions.
different shades of the shirt, or whatever.
So like if you go in your house, right? If you open the door and you go inside, you might see what it looks like right now, right? That's one simple impression, the vision, for
Right.
example. You might smell what the house smells like. You might hear whatever sounds are going on.
The
All
grouping of it is a complex.
The grouping of that is the complex impression, right?
So
Now, the complex idea, basically, you have
repeated to me as 3 times.
you have a bunch of different ideas. So
Yeah.
think about what your dog looks like.
Right, that's what I said. The complex idea is the...
But what your dog looks like, that's a simple idea.
No, I know, but the complex idea is the multiple...
The combination of
Right,
ideas.
that's what I said, bro, yes.
The grouping of
The
ideas,
grouping,
yeah.
I said that, go.
You start with a term. You ask
Okay.
what idea is tied to that term.
Right.
If there's no idea tied to the term, it's bullshit. All right? If there's
Sure.
a complex idea tied to the term, then you break it down into the simple ideas that it's made of.
So
Right.
there's a complex idea, you break it down to from the simple ideas.
Yeah. You break it down to the simple ideas. Remember that all ideas for Hume are derived from impressions.
Gotcha.
So if it's a complex idea, all it is a bunch of simple ideas wrapped around each other in a certain way.
Jesus.
So all you got to do is find the simple ideas,
Okay.
and those simple ideas, you trace them back to their original impressions, to their simple impressions.
Wow.
You break them down to where they came from
Right.
in experience.
It would have to be from experience.
Remember that your dog, when you think of him, right, that impression, that simple impression that simple idea came from the simple impression of you seeing him. So if you wanted to trace that simple idea back to somewhere, you trace it back to the simple impression, you seeing your dog.
Me seeing my dog that time.
And a complex impression, the smell of your dog combined with like the sounds your dog makes,
Him barking.
all of those
combined.
things combined together, that would be a complex idea if it's molded in and wrapped up into a nice little tight package. But you can open up that package and break it down into its parts, and those parts you could tie them back
Okay.
to experience, to sensory experience, to where you
It
got
happened.
that information from. Because if all the information that you have comes from the senses and then you combine it to turn it into something else, well, then you should be able to get that combination, break it down into its pieces, and then be able to see where in your experience you got that from.
Wow.
Okay. Now, if it's a
Sheesh.
complex idea,
Okay.
and it is tied to a term, which means it's not bullshit, which means it actually means something.
Okay.
You break it down into the simple ideas, and then you trace those simple ideas back to their original impressions, which means you trace it back to experience. You trace it back to where it originally comes from. Now, if that doesn't work at any point, if any of these small, simple ideas are in question and they don't actually have any mental content, then that means that this is bullshit, right? If you break it down and you start seeing that there's no mental content, it's bullshit. If you can't trace it back
To something.
Exactly. So if the process works, you have just defined what's you just came up with what's called a just definition, right? This is a precise account of the idea's content. Think about how precise he wants to be. He wants it to be so precise that the idea can be traced back to experience.
I mean, that's his whole argument, which is, damn, dude, just to think like that.
It's amazing, yeah. No, it's very impressive. I told you I was gonna shit on Hume here,
Yeah.
but it's hard to, man. This is so beautiful. It's hard. It's hard.
It's hard to even process. That's what I was saying, like, dude, to come up with all this shit
no,
and
the
just
man
like,
is, to say he was ahead of his time is like the understatement.
and it's like
the century.
you can't be. It's like he's not saying anything wrong. It's like,
It's such a the problem is how weird it is that makes it so beautiful, because there's so much depth to it that actually ties back to reality that it's hard to
and you can't question reality. It's like it happened.
it's very different. And as you go forward, I mean, you start seeing, I mean, it gets weirder.
Fucking, I got a couple different little segments from David Hume. Let's see what I got. I was telling you earlier about like his like idea on how to be happier.
Yeah, to get to his moral shit, yeah.
Fucking, there's this book that he has called On the Delicacy of Taste and Passion.
Yeah.
And hence I watched the YouTube video, so I didn't read the book. I'm just basing my knowledge off some other guy's interpretation. But it seemed pretty credible. So, but whatever, pretty much this is how to be happier from David Hume. He believes to pretty much passion, I guess in the book, or this is like an easy way to say it, is accidental events in life that are not in our control.
Yeah.
So that's what passion is. Like, that's what he means when he's talking about it. And the delicacy of taste is activities that we choose to do.
You develop your taste, yeah.
Yeah, it's things that we like to do, hanging out with your friends, you know, just things that we do. So the delicacy of passion is interesting. It's like, a delicacy is like pretty much being like emotionally invested, emotionally sensitive towards it.
Yeah.
So, whatever. Obviously, there's people out there who take things like extremely serious.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, any little thing will have them like
They're very sensitive to shit.
very sensitive to like let's say they fucking, I don't know, something happened that was accidental in their life or just some random bullshit, and they'll just take it to the fucking heart or whatever.
So their reaction will be really intense.
And then they find $1 on the floor, they'll be fucking
Elated.
Yeah, super happy. Like,
yeah. They order a soda and it's accidentally a diet soda, they'll be fucking crying in the car.
Exactly.
It's
And Hume says, people of this character have no doubt more lively enjoyments as well as more pungent sorrows than men of cool and sedate tempers, which is actually...
It's more an argument against stoicism than for it.
In this part, but...
In that part, yeah, at least in that regard.
But it's that actually, when I read that, I was like, wow, because I don't know, I kind of relate to that in a way, because it's like, I feel like...
It's almost a case for voluntarily giving yourself bipolar disorder.
It's like, should I live this way so I could have extreme highs?
Higher highs and lower lows?
And lower lows? Or should I just keep it cool always and like maintain a steady balance, I guess? Like, it's a weird way of like...
I think balance works.
Yeah?
I think balance works, yeah.
Versus the emotional roller coaster?
The emotional roller coaster does not work. It distorts too much.
Yeah, but Hume would say that we have way more pleasures in our life than those accidental moments.
You might have more sensory pleasures, but that's really an overestimation of
someone's life?
Of what's worth
Or
living for.
Or what's worth living for.
My opinion.
Your opinion. Yeah, no, okay. Let me see. So, yeah, I read that people is character. All right, so whatever, quick. Then the delicacy of taste, I told you, it's like the shit we want to do, the activities we're into.
You got to develop what you're into. You got to develop a taste for shit. You can't just go around all willy-nilly.
Now, you may encounter painful experiences while getting involved in your interests.
Yeah.
But you respect and appreciate them regardless. That's, I guess, according to what Hume is saying.
Take the good with the bad in many ways.
And this YouTuber used watching Schindler's List as an example. As in, like, it's a very, like, the events of the movie is very bad, obviously, and stuff, but, like, you appreciate it because it's a good film. It's showing things that happen in history.
Right.
XYZ, you get it, whatever.
It's sort of like almost getting something that's
watching
terrible and creating something good out of it in many ways. It's
exactly, like, it's a good film, but obviously the events are fucking horrible,
yeah.
Right? And Hume says, quote, "I believe, however, everyone will agree with me that notwithstanding this resemblance, delicacy of taste is as much to be desired and cultivated as delicacy of passion is to be lamented and to be remedied if possible."
I really do wish I would have gotten more into his moral philosophy because it did seem beautiful as well. And I did see some...
Oh, no, my fault. Delicacy of taste is what he's referring you live your life by. Like,
yeah.
Pretty much this is where the Stoicism, not to cut you off, by the way.
It does make sense with Stoicism.
Like, he actually agrees that, like, you should put all your emotional baggage or investment into the delicacy of taste, your interest.
Yeah.
Versus the accidental events that happen in your life that you have no control over.
Yeah, because in Stoicism, they say, Epictetus at least said, you know, what you have to do is place desire and aversion in things that are in your control.
Right.
And leave desire and aversion outside of things that are not in your control.
Right, and delicacy of taste is...
And if it's a taste, it's something that you develop, something that you acquire.
His first argument was, what was it? Like I said, don't react to or don't be emotionally invested into things that you can't control. And then the second argument is to think differently, which is where...
Oh, he did a great job with that one.
Where he said that while you do your interests, all the mental pain from the delicacy of passion, like, evades or it goes away, and, like, you think more positively type shit. I'm just rephrasing now. But, and then he says the good or ill accidents of life are very little at our disposal. But we are pretty much masters of what books we shall read, what diversions we shall partake of, and what company we shall keep. And
he doesn't sound like a determinist.
Yeah, he doesn't. And a determinist would argue for sure. I mean, yeah, but I think we have relatively more control over pursuing our interest than the random events that are happening in our life. What do you think?
I think at the very least it feels that way. So as an impression,
I mean, technically, because the accidental events. I mean, obviously, it's hard to. Because we could right now, me doing this podcast, I'm doing this podcast right now with you. I'm driving. I want to do this. I want to do that. Like, the interest that I want to do, I'm in control of. It feels, I mean, I guess it feels like I have more control because I'm doing it because I want to.
Well, that's a major theme in Stoicism, is deciding what actually, knowing the difference between what is and isn't in your control.
It is a tough argument.
And because the Stoics want to say to everything that is not in their control that it is nothing to them.
Right. That you shouldn't even
blink nothing
about it. It ain't shit. It is what it is.
If it's not in your control, it's nothing to you.
And what else did I put?
And it's not something that you just shut off. It's something that you work towards. In other words, you have to practice that. You don't just from one day to the next learn how to see things, how to distinguish between what's yours and what isn't, what's in your control, what's not, what powers you have, what powers you don't. You have to develop that sensibility by distinguishing in your own mind. There's a lot of things that are very close to mindfulness and stoicism, because you have to perfect that. A lot of it is based on Platonic ideas as well.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that, and this is used in therapy, the idea that it's not the events that happen to you that make you feel bad. It's the way that you think about the event that happens to you that's making you feel bad. And some people will say shit like, well, my fucking, if all right, let's say my whole family just got in a fucking car accident.
Sure.
And they all died, right? And I feel bad. Do I not feel bad because they died? And Epictetus would reply...
How would he reply?
First of all, he would probably... Oh, slavish man. You know... Because, you know, he would say that, you know, people who are... who have...
They're slaves to
who have
their...
desire and aversion placed in things that are out of their control.
Are slaves.
You're necessarily a slave.
Mentally, pretty much.
Yeah. The idea would be this. So imagine that, let's start with simple things, because Epictetus tries to get people to start with simple things because they would in no way be willing to accept placing desire and aversion in more complex things like your whole family.
Right.
Because those things are more valuable to you. So start with something simple. Back then it was something like a ceramic cup that you really like.
Sure.
Now, if your neighbor's son breaks a cup, you're very willing to say, oh, these things will happen. But if your own cup is broken, it is presently, alas, how wretched am I? If your own neighbor's son happens to die, you're ready to say, this is a human accident. These things happen.
Sure.
But if your own son happens to die, is presently, alas, how wretched am I? He says the will of nature, they're all about living in accordance with nature.
Right.
May be distinguished, may be found by distinguishing in those things which we don't, and distinguishing the way that we feel about things that don't happen to us. So things that don't happen to us, somebody else's kid dies.
Versus yours.
Versus yours dies. What exactly is it that's making you feel bad? Is it the death? Is it the death that causes your emotion, or is it your impression about the death? Well, if it's the death, then why isn't it that somebody else feels that way?
Died.
The death is still the death.
Yeah.
So what else is going on?
Hume would say that there's nothing there. It's only your dislike of the murder.
He would say that there's no way to prove that, you know, the reason he's dead is because he got stabbed 48 times by his neighbor.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, his neighbor stabbed him 48 times and he died, but there's no reason. I mean, he would be great in court.
Yeah.
Oh.
He'd be a fucking mastermind lawyer, dude.
I'm sure that'd be great. He was going to become a lawyer, but he decided not to. Right? No, he didn't want to.
Oh, he didn't want to? I heard that I guess the public education or wherever he was by wasn't, after he started with these ideas and shit, people were really not fond of him.
They were accusing him of being atheistic and
they were hating on him.
It was a very religious era, so you didn't want to fuck around and find out. But
he didn't believe in God.
He
right?
ended up in that's.
It's not that he didn't. That's another.
The problem is that he published some works posthumously. So after he died,
sure,
some of his works were published, which a lot of people did back then. Because they were like, I can't say this shit while I'm alive. I mean, these motherfuckers will eat me alive, you know.
Fuck it, though. Smart.
So there's that. The Stoicism, I mean, I could go off on the beauty of Stoicism for years. I mean, it's fucking
Wait, hold up. I got some more Hume segments.
I got a lot of Hume.
Fucking... So yeah, pretty much what we were talking about, the delicacy of taste and passion. Hume is pretty much saying we should be more emotionally engaged to our interests in life. And yeah, pretty much engaging with our delicacy of taste will take away our mental energy from passion. So pretty much just worry about the shit you're into, and forget everything else. Also, there's also a thing about of the standard of the taste.
Yeah.
And pretty much overall, kind of saying is taste subjective.
I mean, yeah, because you can build you can build a taste for certain things, and so it's like the way that you
Let me read to you what I got my notes on this. Well, I'm gonna give you a quote from the man himself. The same Homer who pleases at Athens and Rome 2,000 years ago is still admired at Paris and London. All the changes of climate, government, religion, and language have not been able to obscure his glory.
Yeah.
Quote from David Hume.
That's facts.
And this, once again, this is just an interpretation of somebody else. Apparently, Hume thought beauty wasn't entirely subjective and it wasn't objective.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he thought beauty was relational.
Man, I don't know anything about his theory of aesthetics. I'll be the first to admit.
Beauty is something that arose out of a relationship between people and certain kinds of objects.
Mm-hmm.
Perception is the key to taste, being more than subjective.
Mm.
And that's just a little...
Well, yeah, because perception, I mean, you would have to get... If you're an empiricist and you're claiming that observation can be objective,
right?
And whatever it is that you decide is beautiful is based on observation, because that's the only place where your impressions can come from. There has to be an element of objectivity to it.
Technically, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't do that much into it, but that's like a little that I was getting into that I was reading about. And also the idea, there was like some personal identity was an illusion created by the brain.
I mean, I pretty much agree with that, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think even modern neuroscience would...
Yeah, and a bunch do. Yeah. A lot of them say that Hume was...
I mean, shit, Sam Harris makes that argument.
Okay. Well, just throwing that out there.
He has a PhD in neuroscience.
What else did I write about Hume? I think we touched on this, but morality does not exist in reason, but rather in passions.
I know where that's coming from, because...
I'll just finish this. If one were to examine murder, you wouldn't feel no pain, right?
Uh-huh.
Therefore, you couldn't find the vice. You would only uncover your own dislike in murder.
Right. He's pretty much saying, like, people establish the way they feel about something, they establish that feeling first, and then they reason to try to decide what it is that... Right. Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I think people generally tend to do that. I don't think it's necessarily the case that people do that, because there's a lot of examples of times where people don't do that.
Where?
I think the general rule, people can establish ideas and concepts that
would give them that feeling.
Yeah, that make them feel a certain way towards something. And so it's not necessarily...
Reading it somewhere, seeing it somewhere.
Yeah.
Just like seeing that same...
And a lot of people, when you do ask them about a certain case, why something is wrong, they have a reason.
A reason.
That they've established already. But if you go into this idea of, like, causality, then it becomes difficult to separate. Because the problem is that once you're talking about morality, the morality is based on what? It's based on the system of his epistemology,
sure,
his ontology, right? You got to go back to, like,
your human template. Fucking J.P. Sartre would say that. Like, we all have a human template that's kind of our, like...
Well, there's a theory of knowledge that the philosophy is based on. If the theory of knowledge is wrong,
right, and
the theory of morality is based on that, the theory of morality doesn't have a foundation. That's pretty much how it works. If you decide that you live in this world, you live in world A, and world A, since it works like world A, it has morality A, and then there's world B, completely different world, and it has morality B. Okay, but if morality B, right, actually doesn't describe the way the world works, I mean, if metaphysics B, right, if the actual foundation, the way you think the world works for B, if that doesn't describe how the world works, then the morality of world B is not based on anything, right? If you have an idea of how the world works, and you develop your morality based on how you think the world works, if it turns out that you're wrong about how the world works significantly, drastically, well, then there's a good chance that you're going to have to change the morality, because the morality is based on that, right? there's no foundation for it. In other words, you can't trace it back to anything. It's just a set of rules without anything that make it so. There's no argument for it.
Yeah, okay.
Anyways,
that is
but there are.
Keep on.
I was gonna get, because the reason I read from Hume, what I really wanted to get straight, because we were talking so much about Hume and causality.
Okay.
The last time that we talked, what I really wanted to get straight was that.
I mean, yeah, we did talk about it.
And really get straight with his conclusion about it and what's really
let's
going
go.
on.
I got other things we could I probably got like one more. I think it was the reason shit that I was talking about.
Yeah, go for it.
Hold up, it's some shit I wanted to read right quick that somebody put. Oh, have you seen his views on miracles?
No, I haven't. No.
It's actually pretty funny and interesting.
No.
I'll read it really quick with somebody. It's pretty much a good... Hume defines miracles as a transgression of a law of nature caused by divine volition or the interposition of some invisible agent.
Right.
That was quote what I think he put.
That's a very complex way of saying that it's
Full of
God
shit?
did it.
Or God did it? Yeah. There is never enough reliable evidence for a miracle to permit rational belief, because it is always more likely for a miracle to have either been a mistranslation, misinterpretation, or deception.
I mean, I think if you're talking to a guy who doesn't trust in the link between cause and effect, then it's hard to convince him of a miracle.
A miracle. Yeah, I mean, I already... But yeah, and then, let me see...
I mean, I think he makes a fair point, though. Like, that's pretty much...
Right?
Yes.
He also says that, like, there's, like, if... Usually in miracles, it's only, like, a low amount of people that are, like, saying that the miracle happened. It's never, like, a... But that's, like, a dumb, like... That doesn't, like, prove anything. Like, just because a low amount of people... let me see what else. Hold up. According to Hume, according to the whole reason shit, all our intentional actions are the immediate product of passions.
Yeah, I mean, if he thought that if he said that we were guided pretty much by those passions,
like emotions, feelings, desires, like that's...
It's complex to describe, because he talks about, like, these original impressions, like the senses and all that shit. And the passions, the emotions don't come that fast. That the first thing that you get is the information, right? The sensory
the senses,
information,
what you're seeing, what you're feeling,
the experience.
Yeah.
Then you get ideas,
right?
And then you get those passions. But it doesn't just happen in that order, because you're always getting information
at all times
from experience.
Sure.
And you're always having ideas, and you're always having certain feelings, right? Even if you feel like pretty neutral, pretty dry, you notice that.
Do you think reason alone can move us to act? Kant would disagree with what Hume is saying right now. He would say that it's like, it's just natural, it's in us, like it's like...
I think it would be...
And just to read the rest, pretty much says, reason alone cannot move us to act. The impulse must come from emotion or desire or aversion, from passion.
From desire or aversion?
From passion.
You know, that's...
Technically, right? Like, I mean...
No, he's just reminding me so much of Epictetus.
That's what, let me see what else. Hume famously attacks most moral philosophers, ancient and modern, for claiming that there is a conflict between our passions and our reason. He claims to prove that reason alone can never be a motive to any action of the will, and that reason all by itself can never oppose passion in the direction of the will.
Well, he's definitely in disagreement with the Stoics, because they saw reason as the ruling faculty, the one that can contemplate all the other ones.
Hume's view is not, of course, that reason plays no role in getting us to act. He grants that reason provides information, in particular about means to our ends, which makes a difference to what we do. But reason alone, he thinks, cannot move us to act. Whatever. Okay, yeah. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I just don't think that that there's no organism that has their emotional system detached. There's no human that I know of that has their emotional system detached from their reasoning system.
Wait, what? Repeat that again?
Like the way that philosophers, especially the further back you go, talk about the mind, they split it into these different sections. And they say, okay, there's reason, which, you know, you can think and you can use logic and you can organize your thoughts.
Sure.
And then there's the emotions. And so
they separate them kind of.
And they sort of just draw this really thick line between them and say this is A and this is B.
What's your thoughts on that? You think
the brain does not work like that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like
the brain does not work like that.
It's like all fused.
It's an intermingled thing. There's a shitload of stuff that's going on in the background that we don't even fucking notice, right? There's all of this shit that's going on, and we don't even notice it. Now, of course...
so our actions have to be fucking...
Now, of course, you know, this is a guy who's doubting causality, and so if he's doubting causality, then...
He has to have this...
All of this information I'm telling you about, the way that the brain works is based on, causal inferences. And so he would even be able to doubt the foundation of that. But I don't think he necessarily wanted to.
Right.
And this is why, like, all right. Did you want to cover another one as well?
Let me see. I'll just finish up. I think that might be it. Human friendly logic is upon. Always trying to. Oh, actually, I want to read this because this guy actually, I think he explained it pretty good. It helped me understand it a little more. And then I don't have anything else. Hume firmly believed that knowledge of causality was a posterior, I don't even know how to say that, dude, or posited after an experience. For example, when I experience a billiard ball ram into another, I am given the idea that the former caused the movement, blah, blah. For Hume, if we repeatedly experience the same thing, ending in the same result, we develop a custom or habit of that relation. Hume would say that this custom or habit leads us to predict with a high degree of certainty that the same cause will lead to the same effect, but the probability is never 100% certain. So Hume's skepticism of causality isn't so much about doubting causality itself, but rather a willingness to acknowledge that a new experience can change how we previously interpreted a causal relation.
There's a lot to unpack there because he's sort of saying...
Was he wrong or what?
In a few sentences, some minor parts of what I'm trying to get at here.
Perfect. That's all I have.
That is the causality. Because, okay, to get to the causality issue, you really have to get past Hume's theory about how the mind works, because that's what he uses as the framework.
Right. That's the foundation.
Because remember, he's building his goal here is to build a science of human nature. He develops principles of association.
Principles of association.
And he has 3 principles, right?
Okay.
Now, the principles of association, what that basically means is that the thoughts that we have, they're organized a certain way, right? Your thoughts, they don't just occur randomly. If they did, they would be loose, they'd be unconnected. We wouldn't be able to think coherently.
Sure.
So there's a connection that we make between certain ideas, right? And this connection causes the mind to join certain ideas more frequently than others. So the appearance of one idea introduces another.
Gotcha.
Okay. So he's talking about the mind's ability to associate ideas, right? Association doesn't mean that the mind has to connect 2 or more ideas. It means that something commonly ends up happening when one idea naturally introduces another. Let me try to frame that a little bit differently to make it more coherent. Right. So it doesn't mean, an association doesn't mean that the mind is forced to connect 2 ideas.
Okay.
It doesn't have to. There's a bunch of ideas that you don't connect.
Sure.
Right.
That they're just
It means that there's some ideas that you naturally end up
thinking or
through
just...
a process connecting. You end up connecting them naturally. One idea ends up being tied to another, right? If you get in your car, well, I don't want to get to that part yet.
Okay, go.
I was going to get into something causal. I don't want to do that yet.
Okay.
Hume knows that it's pretty obvious, right? That the ideas that we have, they're pretty much connected in this way. We make associations, right? But what he's trying to do is this. He's trying to describe all of the ways that we associate things. Mm-hmm. And he says that these are universal principles, which means they apply across the board.
Sure.
Yeah. So, that's a bold claim. 3 principles of association. This is what he ends up coming up with. He ends up coming with 3 principles. One of them is resemblance. Another one is contiguity in time and place.
Okay.
And the other one is causation.
Okay.
And that one is where we end up getting into some shit.
Yeah.
Right? So resemblance. That's basically, for example, somebody shows you a picture of your best friend, and you think of your best friend because the picture looks like that person.
Right.
Right. Resemblance. Pretty simple. Okay. Contiguity in time. Let's say somebody reminds you of something that happened in 2001.
And I remember it.
And then because they remind you of that event that happened in 2001, you remember 9/11.
Or things related
because
to
that also happened in
2001.
Right,
Okay.
because they're temporally temporally connected.
Yeah.
Right. Now, he doesn't have an issue with these associations, right?
This is the hard one now, causation.
We're still in contiguity because there's contiguity in time, but there's also in place. Okay. So think about say you're thinking about Wall Street, right?
Sure.
Now that might lead you to think about the Empire State Building because they're both in New York.
Sure.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward, right? They're spatially connected.
Right, this one's easy. Yeah.
Okay. Causality. Okay. Causality works from cause and effect.
Okay.
Right? Like you're in your car, and so you turn on the button or flip the switch or whatever the fuck.
And the car turns on.
And the car turns on.
That's cause and effect.
Right. And from effect to cause. Remember, we're talking about his theory of the mind.
Sure.
Right. So here's 2 examples. Here's an example of cause to effect. Right. You meet someone's father, and that father reminds you of the son, because the father is the cause of the son.
Sure.
All right. This is the opposite, right? You meet someone's son. That son reminds you of the father. Exactly. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Causation is the strongest of these associative principles, meaning that it's like the one that we really hold on to, right? Mm-hmm. It makes us establish a connection between what happened and what we think is going to happen in the future. This is where we get to time has a lot to do with the problems that Hume puts forward with causality, because Hume thought that causation was the least understood of all of these associative principles, right?
100%. Yeah.
And
it's hard. It's like,
it is. Yeah. No, it's fucked. I'm telling you. These associative principles, they're supposed to be original in the same sense that he talks about original impressions, because original impressions, he thought that they were just this was as much as you can explain it, like the way that something looks when you get that sensory information, that's as close as you can get.
That's the best you got.
To explaining it. That's the purest form of the information you can get. There's no idea that you can generate that can give you as clear
as you looking at it presently.
Yeah, you won't get a clear idea that is as clear as the experience, right? And he thought that the same was true about associative principles. They're original, and you can't explain them further.
Right.
So
it just is what it is.
That means that we don't know what their causes are. The same way you don't know what the cause is of the sensation of you looking at your dog. You can't know the cause of that because that's pretty much as far as you can dig into that. I don't want to dwell too much on that part. I know it can seem a little bit daunting and shit, but
yeah, dude. It's like, what?
But they're part of like the original qualities of human nature, meaning that we all make causal links. We all make causal inferences. We have to.
It's how we live.
It's how we survive. Yeah,
there's no other explanation.
That's facts. I mean, that's just
it is what it is, bro. Like, it's like if I one day just think like, you know what, if I don't eat today, if I don't eat for the next 40 days, I will be all right. I'll think that, right? Because
you might think that.
I might think that. And it might happen, but it might not happen, right?
Yeah.
Technically, who knows, right? With Hume's thinking.
I mean, who knows? I mean, listen.
Just because I've been eating my whole life and I've been fed and I've been living this whole time because of it, doesn't mean that I really...
Exactly.
It's pretty much the whole summary of David Hume's whole... But it's hard to, like... It's hard to argue it because, like you said, there is no, like... We don't know why. Like, there's no cause. The cause of it, we don't know. Like, we don't know why. It's a mind fuck, and it's confusing to, like, normal people. Probably be like, what are you talking about, bro? I tried to explain this to, like, a normal person, like, in the best, easiest way I can.
Oh, that must have gone well.
And they were just like, what are you talking about, bro? Like,
what are you doing trying to explain these ideas to the profane masses?
Stop trying to... You're smoking too much weed, trying to explain to me this dumb philosophy shit. Like, people don't really, like, understand it, you know? But nah, it is, like... It's hard, like I said, it's hard to, like, really challenge Hume on a lot of things. Because he's just, like, nitpicking.
He's trying to go as far as you can.
Like, without, like, all right, now you're just crazy. Like, you know what I mean?
He thinks he did go as far as you can because he says that listen, when he says that you can't know the cause of original principles and original qualities.
Sure.
We talk about qualities, he's talking about the experiential shit. When you talk about principles, you're talking about, like, the associative principles, like causation and... You know, things that have to do with ideas and the natural associations that we make, right? The causes of these things are unknown. In other words, it's unknown why we experience that, why that happens.
We don't know.
We can't know, he says, because that goes beyond the bounds of our experience. Yeah, these are the qualities that are at the limits of our experience. And so... You can't explain it further, and so if you try to do it, you'll probably just come up with some bullshit.
Yeah, it's not going to be a fact.
Because you pretty much reached the limit. It's like if somebody tells you 2 + 2 = 4, and then you say, okay, what else does it equal? It's like, it's just 4.
That's it, bro. Like,
why are you looking for another one? There's nothing more to look for, right? That's pretty much...
That's his way of, like,
That's how far he thought he went.
Okay.
So... He's not trying to explain why we associate ideas.
Right, that's the thing about him.
No.
That's why it's, like, hard to, like, argue with him, because it's like...
No, because if you say why, you're pretty much implying causation.
Yeah.
What he wants to do is establish the fact that we do associate ideas in these ways, right? He admits that he can't guarantee that, like, all of these 3 principles that he set out, he can't guarantee those are the only principles, the only ways that we make associations between ideas.
Right.
Like, maybe there's another principle.
But these are the ones that he knows.
But, yeah, and considering probability, you would say that, like, the more thoughts that are explained by these 3 principles, the closer we are to being able to say that he pretty much framed out the 3 ways that we make associations.
Yeah.
So here is the conclusion that he makes on these associative principles, right?
Okay.
First of all, he knew he was the shit, so he said they got serious consequences for the science of human nature.
Okay.
They're the only connections that exist between our thoughts, or these 3 ways of associating things. Those are the only ways that we connect thoughts.
Damn, all right.
And he described them, this is how far he went. He said they are the cement of the universe to us. And all operations of the mind depend on these principles.
There's no way around it, pretty much, is what he's saying. Like, this is the way. Like,
and this is, now we're prepared for causality. Now we're prepared for causation. Now that we've gone balls deep, we're ready for causation.
This is what the people have been waiting for.
Before
Let's go.
we describe Hume's causation, we need some background information to even understand what the fuck he's getting at here, because we described his ideas on mind, but causation is a little bit different. So let's go back just a little bit back in time before Hume.
Okay.
Aristotle. Okay, that was a lot back, but Aristotle came up with a distinction between scientific knowledge and belief, right?
Oh, yeah, I read some of this.
Right. So scientific knowledge. Basically, that's knowledge of the causes of things.
The knowledge of the causes of things?
Yeah, the knowledge of why things happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So, then there's scientific explanation, because he's making not just a distinction between scientific knowledge and belief, but between scientific knowledge and scientific explanation.
Okay, so there's a difference.
Okay, so scientific knowledge, that's why things happen. That's the causes of things. Scientific explanation, that's proving that there's a necessary connection between a cause and its effect. In other words, there has to be a connection that shows that it's necessary for this effect to be due to this cause.
Me turning my car on.
Exactly.
Me hitting the button is what turns the whip on.
You have to say it's necessary in order for this to occur.
He's not wrong.
Right? And so this was based on intuitively obvious premises, and the premises are independent of the experience. What does that mean? That you push a button,
The car turns on.
and then car turns on. Those are the experiences. That's the experiential information. But he said that these are independent of experience. This is Aristotle.
So these are independent.
So that what he's saying is that this knowledge about causality is not due to anything empirical. It's due to something that's intuitive. This is due to reason. We use reason to figure out causality.
We use reason?
Yes. Now, this is going to be an issue.
Okay.
Right. So modern philosophers, the more modern you get, right, they rejected Aristotle's idea about causation, obviously, right? They obviously accept that there's a difference between knowledge and beliefs,
Okay.
right? I can
we
believe
can agree on that, yeah.
I can believe in the tooth fairy, but that doesn't have anything to do with the knowledge that 2 + 2 = 4.
Right, the tooth fairy exists.
Unless it depends, some schools these days, you never really know, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some odd shit going on.
Yeah.
Modern philosophers, they looked at causal inferences more as like a exercise of reason.
Okay.
And the purpose of making these causal inferences, this exercise of reason, is to sort of explain why it's necessary to connect cause to effect. In other words, why it's necessary to say that not just you push a button and your car turns on. No. What happens between you doing that and the car turning on that connects one to the other?
Right. I've heard people talk about this. Like, there's no, middle. Where's the middle information?
Yeah.
Where's the
gap?
between? What's the gap between cause and effect? What's the... Right, okay.
And so Hume's thoughts on knowledge and beliefs. Okay, so he divides everything that has to do with human reason into 2 categories. This is where you can really start to understand what he's talking about in his argument about causality, right?
All right.
So he has these 2 ideas. One of them is relations of ideas.
Okay.
And the other ones are matters of fact.
I might have read a little bit about this. Okay.
Relations of ideas, these are things that you can know a priori.
A priori?
Yes. What that means is that you can deduce it.
Oh, okay.
In other words,
what does that mean exactly?
Theoretical deduction. It's not based on anything empirical. It's not based on observation. You can deduce it. 2 + 2 = 4.
Got you.
It doesn't depend on anything that actually exists.
Subjective.
Doesn't matter if anything actually exists. 2 + 2 = 4.
Still 4. Yeah.
By deduction.
Right.
Or addition.
And inductive is the...
It's basically deduction. You just rule out everything until you're left with no option, and then that only option
take
that's
out
left over.
everything subjective in the world.
Yeah.
What will be left?
Induction is just adding something, right? So, all right, we have claims about matter of fact. These are empirical claims about the way the world actually is.
Okay.
And their contraries are always possible. What do we mean?
Possible?
What do we mean by their contraries are always possible? It's always possible to make a claim to the contrary.
Okay.
Without being contradictory.
Gotcha.
In other words, if I say...
if I drop this ball...
Let me go on before I give an example.
Go.
So, if you can deny these claims, right? Like denying the claims that are empirical, the claims about how the world works, about how things really happen, you can deny those claims without contradicting yourself. Now, contradicting yourself has nothing to do with whether or not you're right or wrong. Like, I can say that, Miami is to the north of New York. That's not true.
It's definitely not.
But there's no contradiction in saying that. There's not a logical contradiction. It's just a hypothesis that's wrong.
Sure, okay.
Right.
But what was the first thing you said? It's not a contradiction, right?
It's not a contradiction.
I mean, yeah, it's not. Sure. Okay.
So, anyways, that's basically what it is, right? You can't basically empirical claims, these matters of fact, as Hume is calling them, you can't get them through deduction. You can't establish it by what Aristotle might have called demonstration, right? You just can't do it. So the difference between matters of fact and relations of ideas is what people nowadays call Hume's fork.
Oh, I've read some of this too. I forgot.
Or
it's like 3 parts, right? The fork, or something like that.
It's well, those two. The difference between the two. So the causal inference, right? This is see. This is something else that's interesting about Hume. He, in his own work, he would go through what's called the critical phase, where he would sort of just try to figure out all the fucking problems and point them out and point out why this doesn't work. This is where he's a very real skeptic.
Yeah.
And then he would go through like he would go through a phase where he then tries to establish something, like where he adds something instead of just breaking down the flaws and ideas.
Okay.
So the critical phase, he ends up discussing how causal inferences, that's the only way that we go beyond our experiences. That's the only way that we go beyond our senses and our memory.
Causal inferences. And this is
basically supposing that everything
works the way it works.
Everything has a cause. Like one thing, if there's an effect,
there's going to be a cause.
If your car is on, it's because you turned it on.
Turned it on or something, right?
Right. So we suppose that, there's a connection
assuming something's going to happen because...
Yeah.
Right, pretty much.
That there's a connection between the facts, the present facts that we have now.
Right, this is what Hume's been saying the whole time, that everything is just causal inferences.
Pretty much, yeah.
At some point, right.
But he has some questions about these causal connections.
Okay.
Like, what is the connection?
That's his argument.
Yeah, and how is the connection established? So he wants to figure out, first of all, are these connections, are causal connections, are they based on reason? And if they're based on reason, they got to fall into one of two categories, right? Relations of ideas,
or
which means you can deduce it, or matters of fact, which means it has to be empirical knowledge.
No matter what, yeah.
So Hume says they can't be relations of ideas. And he goes on to point out why that's the case, and I do agree with him on that.
Read that. I want to hear this.
So, all right. So here's the idea. They can't be relations of ideas because an effect and a cause are two different events.
Right. A, B.
It's not contradictory to say that a cause occurred and that its usual cause didn't occur. In other words, it's not contradictory to say that you pushed that button and your car didn't turn on.
Sure.
Right.
It could happen.
It could happen.
Yeah. I dropped this ball and maybe it won't drop.
Here's the way that he tries to show to you that it's not a matter of just using your reason. That it's not a matter of using reason, right? So it's not that type of knowledge. It's not relations of ideas that lead us to make causal claims. So suppose that you woke up. This isn't his example, but it's an example that perfectly ties into what he's talking about here.
Sure.
So suppose that you woke up into a life as an adult, no recollection of anything, but you have the intelligence of Einstein, right?
Okay.
Now, say there's an aspirin in front of you.
The pill?
A pill.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Could you, just by using your relations of ideas,
all the information that I've...
figure out that it would help you with a headache just by examining it?
No.
Okay, since the answer is no, then it's not a priori reasoning. In other words, you consider, right, the cause... How do I put this? If you have a situation where you can't figure out what that aspirin does,
okay,
then it's not knowledge that's based on relations of ideas. It's not something that you can just deduce. Right. It's not something that
I can just think, just make up out of my head.
You can't find it out the way that 2 + 2 = 4. It's just not gonna fucking happen,
right,
because there's nothing. You need external information.
You need an experience.
And so
you need
that's
something.
And so that's not where you get causal claims from.
Right.
That's not the knowledge that we're using, right?
I'm rolling still. For sure.
Okay. So, but the problem is that a priori reasoning, meaning reasoning that has to do with like the connections of ideas, nothing empirical, nothing in the outside world, nothing to do with the senses, just our ideas and reason, pure fucking just straight up reason. When you consider, right, the cause of something, you consider it independent of the observations you make about it. This is why this aspirin example makes sense.
It's a good example, yeah.
Because you're considering just the aspirin, which is the cause, and let's see if you can come up with the effect
without any history, without
any experience.
Yeah, without any experience. Right. It's impossible. Like, you can't. Like,
so unless it would be by fucking probability, you just took a fucking guess or some shit.
Yeah, just random, yeah. That would be the only case.
But that wouldn't be real knowledge. So
yeah.
You didn't deduce it.
Yeah,
you didn't have a reason as to why you chose that. You just ended up coincidentally coming up with it. So what
outsmarted these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Because when you're considering something a priori, right? When you're considering something without any empirical knowledge, you're just considering it in terms of ideas, just pure ideas, no experience. You're considering the idea that you have in your mind of a cause, in other words, the aspirin, which is causes the relief of the headache, without including the relief of the headache, right? Because that's what you think is the effect.
Right. That's what's
you
going to happen.
You don't have any knowledge of that.
Yeah.
You're just thinking what would happen here. You're just using all of your own mental faculties without any...
It's like the example I gave you like the other pod ago, where it's like if you didn't know about coins...
Right.
Like if you never knew about coins and I just randomly flip this coin and it turns into a butterfly... And then I keep flipping it and it turns into a butterfly. Now you're gonna think it turns into a butterfly because that was your first experience with it, and that's. But yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty much yeah. So all right, so let's continue with this aspirin example because I think we can push it a little bit further, right? So how do you decide that an aspirin is gonna help you with a headache by simply examining the aspirin, right?
How do you decide?
Can you determine like what effect the aspirin is gonna have just by looking at the aspirin?
I mean, obviously, no. Like you said, it would have to be a lucky guess.
Right.
Like if I'm just I don't have any info in my head. I never seen this before. I don't know anything about it. It's impossible.
So since you need the effect, in other words, since you need to observe the experience in order to make that connection, then that means that since you can't do it with the aspirin by itself, you can't show any necessary connection between cause and effect.
Yeah.
You can't show...
So he's just pretty much ruling this out between any type of cause and effect.
He's saying if you can't show...
with that example...
If you can't show the connection without having the cause, there's no connection that you're showing me, so you're not using anything that's deductive, you're not using anything that's just based on, your examination of something.
Let's throw science out the window then while we're at it.
Well, I mean, that's not really, but that's not what Hume wanted to do, though. See, this is the interesting.
He just wanted to show that there's an issue that nobody really is even throughout all these years of living. We still haven't got a real agreement.
Yeah,
like we're really just like riding the flow, pretty much. We're riding the wave with these like hypotheticals, I guess. If we're just in Hume's world,
Yeah, it gets pretty.
I mean, it sucks because like you said last pod, it's like or whatever like technically we're not living like that. We don't live like a empiricist. Like we do live with the knowledge of science. We live with all these ideas that people have said and stuff, and it's not really based. I mean, it's tough. It's. But yeah, keep going.
It does leave us in a weird territory, right? Because
it makes you feel like, damn, like, am I all this time, like
if I just left you with that aspirin, like the only information you're gonna come up with, if I don't tell you what it does,
this is a pill,
and you don't see what it does, all you're gonna have is like what you might call the sensible qualities, right? Like the stuff that has to do with the senses, like what's the size, what's the shape, what's the weight.
Shit could be poisonous, bro. I could fucking.
It doesn't tell you what the secret powers of aspirin are, right?
That's what I'm saying, though. It could be fucking poisonous for all I know. I could think it's that. I could think it's like, you never really.
You could get all types of shit that you could just make.
Notions
I mean, this is
it.
possibly. This is how some people explain religion, right? Like, there's just. causal inference that has nothing to do with any real.
And that was Hume's whole point. Like, if we thought like this, then religion would be in the fucking gutter. Like, it would be like, it wouldn't exist anymore if people really thought like this.
I mean, people got mad at him, you know what I mean? But it doesn't get, you don't get an idea of like the secret powers of aspirin, right?
Right.
Just by like fucking staring at it. You don't notice that it produces any headache relief. I know we've covered that, but it's very important because the problem is that a priori reasoning, right? Just reasoning without any actual like information from the external environment.
A scientist would probably fucking scream at you.
It does not account for cause and effect. It doesn't explain it.
No matter how much you want to fucking do the experiments and do all this bullshit in science, like, there is still no answer, though. Like, there's no, like...
Well, now he's trying to figure out, because since it's not deductive, he's trying to figure out, well, if it's not deductive, there's only one place left for it to be, because I gave you two categories. One of them is relations of ideas, and the other one is matters of fact, which is the empirical one.
Yeah.
So these must be, if they're not based on, if they're not based on relations of ideas, then they have to be based on matters of fact and experience. So here's what happens. You experience something that ends up being followed by another thing, right? You have A happens, right? You push the button, and B, the car turns on, right? You constantly experience that. So you infer one from the other, right? You just assume that
it's gonna
pushing the
happen
button
again.
Makes the car fucking turn on. Now, that's not based on reason.
It's based on our history and our experiences with...
No, I'm just covering... I'm telling you, because... See, we're back to the fucking aspirin example again with this. I'm fucking... this is getting serious here.
Okay.
Right? The same way that I just told you about that car, right? In the past, you took an aspirin that helped you with your headache.
Uh-huh.
Now, if I say to myself, okay, because I took aspirin in the past and it helped with my headache, if I take this aspirin now, it's going to help with my current headache.
Hume would say that's not...
That's a problem for Hume.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is based on like the superficial bullshit of the aspirin. You see the aspirin, you see its color or size, you go to the store, you say, that's aspirin, somebody tells you that's aspirin, you fucking buy it, you go home.
And you take it.
And you fucking take it.
And you expect it to...
And you expect it's going to help with your fucking headache, right?
Yeah.
But that shit could have been poison for all you know, right? Like that. So these qualities that you see in the aspirin, they have nothing to do with the relief of the headache.
Mm.
You just say, okay, past history, aspirin help with this.
I'll take it again.
I'll take it again. So even if I assume that the aspirin has like some fucking magical powers that help with the headaches, that still doesn't help me form like any causal connection, any cause and effect relationship here, because those magic powers are unknown. There's nothing there. That doesn't say anything. That's just saying like you could fill in the gap and say that's X.
Right.
Okay, variable X. What is variable X? What the fuck is that? That's nothing. It just says that something happens. It's magical, right? So if we have what Hume basically thinks, we see things and they have similar qualities of the senses. In other words, you see one aspirin pill and another aspirin pill, they look identical, right?
We just have certainty. Like, we have like this habit.
Yeah, we form the connection.
Yeah, it's just...
And to us, that aspirin has some secret fucking powers that causes them to relieve headaches, and we expect it to have an effect. And, those effects, we think they're going to be similar to the effects they've had in the past. So that's not intuitive. That's not some shit that you form from deduction. It's not knowledge that you can just have without any experience.
No, it's definitely with experience.
And he says, well, okay, if that's the case, then it must be based on experience. But then he says, okay, think about it like this, though, causality and time. If you experience something in the past, that only tells you about what happened in the past.
Yeah.
If you experience something in the present, that only tells you what you're experiencing now. Now, causal inferences don't just mention what happened in the past. They use what happened in the past to try to predict the future.
The future, yeah.
Right? So this is where we end up in a bit of a different scenario. There's a difference between the following two claims. I'm going to tell you two different claims right now. You're going to see that there's a huge difference between them, right?
Okay.
If I say, all right, in the past when I've taken aspirin, it's helped with my headaches.
Okay.
Is that a prediction?
And so in the past, when you've taken aspirin, it's helped with your headaches?
Yeah.
Is that a prediction? No, that's something that you just...
That's just an observation.
Yeah, that's just something that you know, yeah.
Now, there's the second statement. Taking aspirin, similar to the ones I've taken before, is going to help me with my current headache.
Well, that's currently a prediction.
That's a prediction,
For sure,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so one is an observation of events that occurred
In your past.
together, and the other one is a prediction of future events based on the first observation.
Based on the past
right?
events, yeah.
Exactly. So what Hume wants, he really wants to help the empiricist establish cause and effect. He really wants this to work. But he says, if this is going to work, what we need is a chain of reasoning that explains how something in the past experience is relevant to our future experience. What is the chain that connects these two?
Yeah, there's not.
Okay. There has to be a chain of reasoning that takes you from 1 to 2. From the first claim, which is just, I took this in the past and it helped.
And now you're taking it in the future.
And then saying, I'm taking it in the future and it's going to help.
Again.
Right? Yeah. So he says that what you need is a connecting principle. Something that connects the past to the future, right?
Okay.
And since we keep going...
Your headache, the reason why you're taking the pill, maybe?
Well, in time, basically, the way we observe time, right? Like we're going from the past to the future.
Right.
Or we're going from the present to the future, right? Then maybe there could be some sort of connecting principle showing that nature is uniform. Meaning that it has a certain structure that maintains itself. Right? So this is the idea that the course of nature is not going to change. This is what's called UP or UP, or the uniformity principle.
Okay.
The future will be like the past. Right. And
does Hume agree with this?
No.
I was going to say, yeah.
His conclusion comes down to this. He doesn't... I mean, he's sort of like saying, like, yeah, that's just... It is what it is. This is what I was able to come up with. I mean, I don't know.
It's a lot, you know? That's the most that he can go, though. What else can he go? Like, you know?
You already discussed what the conclusion is. It's custom. It's habit. It's
just a habit.
Principles of association. I mean...
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, we have these customs and they make us... Not cultural customs, but just customs about what we're used to, right?
As humans.
We expect something for the future. We expect the future to be similar as a train of events from the events that we had in the past, right? So custom is like the source of the uniformity principle. And this is a mental thing. This is apparently part of his mental philosophy, because it's not like he can just go outside of that mental shit and just proclaim
some other shit,
whether or not causality is actually something that's going on, because he told us he can't go beyond his limits, those impressions.
Right.
And so basically the belief that the future is going to be like the past. That's where we are with Hume. I mean, it's a pain in the ass, but that's what it is. Now I want to settle some beef with Hume now. Let's go ahead. Let's beef.
All right. What is this? Your critique now?
Let's go for it. Let's go. All right. So let's go ahead and do this now. Let's say that Let's say I have a puzzle, one of those cheap ass dollar store puzzles.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't played a puzzle in a long time.
And I'm putting them together. It's 9 pieces.
All right. And small puzzle.
And I'm only missing. It's a fucking 3-year-old puzzle, right?
Okay.
And I'm retarded, so I'm doing this, right?
Right.
So I'm missing the puzzle piece in the middle. It's still not there.
Okay.
Right. Now, I get that puzzle piece.
Okay.
And I place it in the middle.
Okay.
And the puzzle is now
complete.
Right? Now, is there a chain of events that I can create to say that the reason why this puzzle is now complete is because I placed that piece there that covers it? Are these just 2 completely isolated events that have absolutely nothing to do with each other?
You're asking me if that you putting it down is connected to the puzzle being completed?
Not me putting it down. The fact that there ended up being a piece that was put there, right, has nothing to do with me. Just the piece was put there.
Okay.
And it ended up filling that space. is the fact that something that fills up a certain space, not a reason for why that puzzle is now complete. Is there no chain of events? Is it not the fact that there is something that's geometrically exact
As the piece that you had.
as the piece that I had, and that geometric shape was exactly
The same.
the geometric shape that
you needed.
that was contained in the whole? And is that not the use of reason that's being used to connect one variable to the other, rather than just saying this event happened, that event happened, and there's no connection between the two?
That's a good way to...
Or not that there's no connection, but that we can't show a connection. We can't show a causal chain between the two. All right.
I mean... Is there... what was the main question again?
Is there
the piece...
Is there a chain of events that I can show? Is there something that happens between event A and event B that connects them?
I don't know. You had a good argument, though. Since
other words-
the piece is the exact same.
Well, that part has to do with reason.
With reason, right? But Hume is saying...
It's not based
it's not
on
reason.
It's not based on reason.
Right,
Causality is not based
it's
on
based
reason.
on just my history with... That's a good way to... I don't know. I don't know if there is a chain of events from...
No, not a chain of events. Just a chain that
Of history, of experience that I've had?
No, not of just any chain of information that can be used to say this is what connects A to B.
I would say it because it looks like it fits there. I don't know, like...
Because if geometry...
So geometry...
Because see, Hume accepted, for example, right, that you can rule out completely
Math?
that certain triangles are going to end up being 180 degrees, right?
No matter what.
Because you can find every single combination of those
Right.
triangles. You can rule out every single possibility. It's exhaustive. It rules out everything,
Okay.
right? You look at all the possibilities. And so in that sense, you can show that, right? Is this puzzle piece the same? Is geometry real? Because if it is...
I would say, yeah. I would say that's why the piece... That would be the answer, no?
I just can't see how we rule this out. I just don't see.
Where did you get this example from?
I just thought of it when I was thinking about Hume. I was like, well, motherfucker, what are you saying here? What are you
That's
doing?
a good way to...
What are you saying? You're looking... This is like the missing link in evolution. The missing link, right? You explain that there was... All right, you're like, all right, well, what happened between this species and humanity? And then you find another closer relative to humanity, right?
Right.
And then they're like, all right, well, what happened between that one and humanity? And then you find a closer one. And it's like, well, what happened between that one? And whichever one you find, this fucking dunce is just going to keep on coming up with new missing links.
Damn, that's a good way to argue that, in a way. But wouldn't... So wait, let's rephrase the question again. Why did... what was the question again? Rephrase it. And then I'll answer it.
The question is...
You putting that piece down...
Is there any chain of ideas,
information, anything
that connects
that
A
gave
to
me
B,
that gave me a reason to put that there?
that connects it,
That just connects it.
that just connects it and makes it say, okay, this is
Now it's
sufficient to say that A caused B. That the reason that this puzzle is now complete is because something of that geometric shape was placed there, and that without placing something of a geometric shape there,
It wouldn't be complete.
there's no way for it to be complete, because that hole would still be there. Or at the very least, it would just not be complete.
Right. It would have to be the exact same
Is
size.
there any other possibility? I mean, anything. It doesn't matter if you fucking put a piece of paper that's the same shape. Whatever. If you put anything to fill that hole, is the fact that you put it there not the reason why the hole is now filled?
I don't know.
And I say that because I think that causality is a combination of both things. Of both, like, the
information.
It's both matters of fact, meaning we have the observation and the experience.
And it's the thoughts, the relations of
But
ideas.
we also have relations of ideas. And
But in that situation, in the puzzle example,
Sure.
it would have to be both. Because there is no other way. I mean, I'm fried right now. And
No, it would have to be both, because you have to be able to explain
you have
to explain a tie between A and B.
Yeah.
And so that explanatory function, I think, is typically done by using relations of ideas.
We need the knowledge of the shape or the geometry. We need to know that in order for us to be able to be like, look, this completes it right here. But if we didn't have it, would we? Can we conclude that we'd still know that?
If you didn't know geometry?
Right. Let's say like I didn't know anything about that puzzle piece.
Say you didn't know anything about it.
Or I didn't know that it wouldn't fit.
Because remember, the task isn't, whether, or the task is whether you could know that filling that in would make it
complete.
Mm.
Damn, I don't know. I'm kind of stuck on this one now. I mean, yeah, I think.
Let's isolate it. What is cause? What are we assuming is cause, and what are we assuming is effect?
The effect is it being complete.
It being complete.
And then the cause would be the missing piece that fits it.
Placing a missing piece there
that fits
it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, it would technically need.
Now, if you use that example and you were literally applying...
What would Hume say to that?
If you were literally applying what Hume's logic was at that point, you're saying that you're holding a puzzle piece and you would have no idea to be that puzzle piece would fill in that spot.
Right, that's what I was
saying. Because you wouldn't
saying.
have the rest of the puzzle, right?
Okay.
And I say that's retarded. The puzzle piece fills it out whether or not you have that knowledge.
That's why it's a good argument.
And that's like saying, what is... That's like you put out a mathematical equation that has 48 different variables, and you leave out all of the fucking variables, and you're like, all right, I want you to magically just come up with all of these 40 different numbers that we have here.
Right.
And you say, if you can't do it, then math is bullshit.
I see what you... Damn, the puzzle one is a good one. I'm trying to see how I would argue that. It's like...
Now, I think Hume would probably be able to destroy me in this, but I just don't know how.
I'm fried right now, and I'm not on some... But that is a good one. It's like, technically, you do need... You need to know the puzzle has... Or just you... I'm thinking if you didn't know...
Because I think there are some very convenient examples used by Hume. Now, granted, he's coming up with a theory of human nature and the way that we make associations between things and what it is that we're using to decide cause and effect. And he concludes that what we're using for cause and effect, it's neither something that has to do with a priori knowledge or deduction. It has nothing to do with experience.
Mm-hmm.
What it has to do is with just some other shit that he ends up calling, just ends up calling it custom. Right. Now, granted, he's not obligated to explain.
Right. He doesn't.
He's not obligated to explain that.
Yeah.
But I do think that he was very, very quick in jumping the boat and saying it's neither.
Saying these things.
It's neither of these two, and I know it's neither of these two.
I see what you're trying to say. Without even
and I'm
trying to.
I don't think you've ruled that out in the least. Because I think you only examined it as something that has one of two choices. It can't be both. It can only be one of these two. And supposing he thought it could be both, I don't think he analyzed how it could be both in that way. He might have analyzed it, but I don't think he came to that conclusion, because I think that the premise that he sets up, if we look back at the example of the aspirin, say we look at the example of the aspirin, right?
Uh-huh.
All right, go ahead. You got an aspirin. Could you figure out by yourself that the aspirin is going to get rid of the headache? No, of course it's not going to get rid of the headache, right? Now, he ends up discussing something very important. He didn't give the aspirin example, but this is exactly what he thought. In the aspirin example, you wouldn't come up with the idea that it's just a headache. Well, the idea is that if you can't come up with it, then it's not based on that. And if you can't, and if through experience you can only tie one experience to another, then that means that it's not based on experience, because there's no chain that links one to the other.
You don't know anything about it.
Well, he's basically saying this. You have a situation where you're not using a priori knowledge to explain it, because you couldn't figure out that this is going to cause a relief in headaches just by staring at the pill or thinking about the pill or whatever. And then he says, you also couldn't do it if you were just using empirical knowledge by itself, because all you have is event A and event B, but there's no chain between them. But he completely rules out the possibility that if you use both a priori knowledge and knowledge,
right, just regular
about that, then you would be able to figure out what it is about aspirin that leads to that effect. Because we're talking about...
But isn't the example that he has no knowledge of it, though?
He has no knowledge of it.
Right.
Exactly. He completely rules out all of the experiential part of it.
Right.
To try
to
try to figure out if it's deductive.
If this is deductive.
He says it's not
the only thing he has is that he knows it's
So he says, I ruled out it's not just a priori knowledge, and I ruled out it's not just experiential knowledge. He didn't try to rule out if it's a combination of both.
Both, how though exactly though?
Both how though exactly. Let's think about the aspirin example, right? If you have aspirin and somebody takes aspirin and they notice that they have relief, well, you don't just end the investigation by saying aspirin causes a relief and a headache, right? If you take aspirin, because this is the main point. The main point is you take aspirin and that ends up happening, and you're saying there's nothing that connects the two. Right? Variable A and variable B, what connects the two? Well, it's like, all right, well, let's do more empirical research on what happens in the body when you take that shit.
I mean, that's what you would need to do, right?
Because what happens in the body, we're not just talking about your headache, right? You would need more information.
Right.
Well, let's get more information. Okay, more information. How does the brain work?
You would need all that.
What is the chemistry of this medication?
Right.
How does it interact with the brain?
Right. What is it doing?
All of that. Yeah. Right. And the more you study something empirically, because obviously in science you use a combination of both.
Right.
Of both actual
experience,
about actual reason and actual logic, and combine that with the actual empirical data to be able to come to a conclusion. You actually are using both.
Okay.
And so I haven't read the criticisms of philosophers of science, and I'm sure if one of them listened to this, they'd be like, oh, that's a terrible argument. Hume would destroy it. And you're right. You're probably absolutely right. But I am not at all convinced with the way that Hume described his skepticism, because I feel like he jumped the bullet very fucking quickly. And I'm not satisfied at all with it.
Okay. So you don't think your overall take on the dudes who do critique or the philosophy of science, which is pretty much Hume's bag, right? We could say that.
Yeah, we could definitely say that. I mean,
more or less, he's one of the top dogs.
We're still dealing with issues of causality, yeah.
Fucking. Do you think scientists look at these guys and fucking laugh at them? What? You guys are full of shit.
I'm sure they probably do. Yeah. And in large part because most of the people that are talking that way, first of all, they don't have a solid philosophical foundation for why they have the beliefs they do.
But
they just say, what can I doubt? Oh, everything. Therefore, everything's bullshit.
That's it.
All right, bro, that's cool. That doesn't explain anything. And how did you come to that conclusion? Because you don't seem to be doubting that conclusion.
Right. But I feel scientists, I feel Neil deGrasse Tyson would be I mean, he's pretty smart though.
Doubting everything ends up in a paradox.
No, I know. I was gonna say, oh, dude, I actually have a. Damn, I know we recorded a while, but we should have talked about like the one of the oldest paradoxes ever. Like the whole this sentence is false. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
How that's like.
No, I haven't actually. No, tell me.
You haven't?
No. Tell me.
Damn, dude. I feel like I'm not super. I haven't retained so much
let's
info
do
about
it terrible. Let's make this a shitty philosophy podcast.
I mean, that's pretty much what we're going for.
Yeah.
So, pretty much, if I could remember the information I retained, this sentence is false is one of the oldest paradoxes that to this day nobody can solve. So, in V fashion, I'm going to try to explain.
Right. If it's false. If you're saying it's false.
If you're saying it's false,
how can it be?
Then how could it be false?
Right.
Exactly.
It's like a negative and a negative is a positive.
Right. You pretty much get the idea. It's a contradiction. It's true and it's false, but at the same time, it's like I forgot how to describe it really, but we'll get into it another. But there's a bunch of these videos I've seen. Damn, I can't believe I forgot to talk about that, dude. Fuck. I should have wrote more about it, but the paradoxes, I did I watched a couple of videos about that. That's the most important one I've seen though. This sentence is false. How they still haven't been able to like determine that whole paradox bullshit. But damn, what else was have you heard about Occam's razor?
Yeah, I've heard of Occam's razor, but
Occam's razor. Whatever.
But Occam's razor is more like a way of being able to. Of not overcomplicate.
To rule out, to like simplify, like damn, I forgot the
Don't make things more complicated than they have to be. If you can explain something with 2 variables,
the simplest.
Don't add 20 variables,
right,
because those 20 variables might either be intrusive,
right,
or might not be explanatory. Now, it's possible that you may need them later on, but first rule out that you can't solve it with 2 variables and that those 2 variables don't explain it.
Usually the simplest explanation is the one that you should like go for.
That one I think is probably bullshit.
I was gonna say that. I feel like there's a lot of bullshit to this man's ideas.
I made a YouTube video about that a few years ago.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
About Occam's razor? Well, how do you pronounce it?
Occam's razor.
Occam's?
Yeah, Occam's razor.
Occam's razor, okay. Yeah, because I was listening to it. I actually have it in my book in Philosophy 101, and then I seen like a video about it, and I'm like, this is too vague. Like, I feel like things are so modern now, and there's so many reasonings for why something happens and X, Y, Z that I feel like maybe this is didn't age the best.
I think it's a good strategy, and it's still used in science. The idea that like if you want to be able to figure out something, start with the least amount of information that's necessary, and then because it's easier to rule those out, because the more variables you have, the more time you have to spend ruling things out. If I start with if I wanted to figure out, right, like how it is that this car turns on, right? Mm-hmm. And I start looking through a million variables outside of the car. If I start looking at like what happened on what's on the Kansas Evening News today, maybe that has something to do with this. And you know, if I start going through every single variable
on Pornhub and try to find
instead of trying to look for the most simple explanations and ruling those out, I can waste a whole lot of time. So I think it's just an efficient strategy for trying to figure out what's true and what's not, and like not wasting your time.
Right. Do you know about like what else? Deontology?
Yeah. So if you're talking about ontology, okay. So you're talking about
isn't that Kant's?
Yeah, I'm not a.
And fucking, it's funny because he says it's like the study of duty. So it's like, was he like in the bathroom while like?
That's base.
That was my joke.
That's base commentary right there.
It's funny. The study of duty is just funny. Like that's what he thought. Whatever. That's Kant shit. What else was I've been like looking at?
I do love the Stoic philosophy though. It is a beautiful one.
It's like the most easiest to like reason with. I don't know.
It's practical.
Like, yeah, like it's just
it applies to life.
I feel like it's common sense. Like,
and it's definitely not common sense because most people. I mean, if I told you like, oh, you know, if your parents die in a car accident, it means nothing to you. You're like, that's not common sense. Most people don't think that's true.
Do you agree with that?
No, I think that because the idea in Stoicism is to place aversion and desire.
Gotcha.
and things that are in your control. And that's something that's a practice. That's something that you work towards doing.
Okay.
Right. And so the idea.
But as a Stoic, you shouldn't have any emotions. You shouldn't dwell on it.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
Oh, so you could
No, you have to have, you're going to have emotions. There's no way to not have emotions.
But the best way is to just like.
The idea is to be able to have your emotions be tied to things that are in your control. And the things that are in your control are your own opinions and the way that you think about
Things.
Events and the way that you think about the appearances of things, as Plato might have said.
So as a Stoic, should you try to like maintain your emotions the best way you can? Like, I'm trying to.
The idea is to live in accordance with nature.
Right.
And so your job as a human being and as a part of nature is to adapt to nature.
So no matter what is happening, I just adapt to it, and that's how I'm gonna.
You adapt to it. Yeah, you adapt to it in two ways, right? Even in terms of death, like if you're, like they're like, death is not bad. Otherwise, it would have seemed so to Socrates, and he handled it very well. He could have even escaped.
That's based. I don't think Socrates was enjoying sipping.
He could have easily gotten out of there.
But he was like, fuck it. He's like, hey, man.
He's like, no. The thing is, like, he was a very, and they hold Socrates up to as the ideal.
Right.
Because they're saying, like, look, he followed the laws of his country. He had so much virtue because he believed in honoring the laws of your country that he actually ended up serving out his sentence.
Damn.
Which was death.
And just took it to the face. Like,
death is not terrible, else it would have seemed so to Socrates. But it's the appearances of things, the appearances we have concerning death that make us worry about it. And it can't be that this thing is actually bad because it doesn't bother someone else. What bothers you is the way that you think about it, the appearances you have about it. Now,
the perception of it?
Your actual perception of it, yeah.
I mean,
the way you think about it.
Technically, yeah, of course.
And so the idea is that if you're someone who is not instructed, you'll blame whatever happens to you that you think sucks on other people or on nature or on circumstances.
In that sense, I agree with Stoicism.
And if you are somewhat instructed, you'll end up blaming it on yourself because you're trying to place desire and aversion and things that are in your own control. And so you're thinking, well, it must be my fault then if I'm thinking badly, if I'm not. But if you're perfectly instructed, you'll blame neither yourself or others or nature or the gods or any of that shit.
Just neutral. Just like, hey.
You'll say that the issue is the appearances of things, on your own appearances, not on yourself. Even Epictetus, who was a fucking cripple throughout his entire life, a man who was born a slave, he was like, well, look,
warrior.
Being a cripple is not that's not a injury to me. It may be an injury to my leg, but it's not an injury to me or to my ability to think and reason or any of that shit, right?
Swag. Hell of a guy.
Being sentenced to death, not an issue. You're going to die at some point, and it's always the present moment. Whether it's 30 years from now, the only difference between you dying in 30 years and you dying now is your memory. You have the memory of the events.
Right.
Whatever. But whatever moment you're going to die in, that's the present moment, whether it's in 30 years or now. So the fact that you're concerned about it being sooner rather than later is pretty much you being concerned about how many memories you're going to be able to accumulate by the time that happens.
Yeah, guys, we're out. We'll be back next episode with more shit.
Bitches love philosophy.
That's why we're
and
here.
Horoscopes.
That's why we're here, guys.
Horoscopes.
We're here every Sunday. Peace.
Peace.